I think the Commission has an account on TikTok. I don't think I've seen a lot of content on that. Wondering if there's any implication for the way the Commission communicates using TikTok with the public. Thanks.
I'm not aware that we have a TikTok account, but we will check. I don't think we do. We don't, says Sonia. Voilà. And therefore that question is a moot one. But for the others, I give the floor to Sonia.
Many thanks. Indeed, the Commission's Corporate Management Board decided to suspend the use of the TikTok mobile application on its corporate devices and also personal devices enrolled in the Commission mobile device system. The measure is in line with our strict internal cybersecurity policies for use of mobile devices for work-related communications. It complements the long-standing Commission advice to staff to apply best practices when using social media platforms and keep high level of cyber awareness in their daily work. So the reasons why this has been, the decision has been taken is to protect the Commission to increase the Commission cybersecurity. Also, the measure aims to protect the Commission against cybersecurity threats and actions which may be exploited for cyber attacks against the corporate environment of the Commission. Also, as I mentioned just, and the Commissioner has said that this decision was carefully analysed, also considered and taken by the Commission's Corporate Management Board. And Eric replied to your last question if the Commission has a TikTok account.
Yeah, thanks. Kim, follow up.
And all you can say about whether there was anything specific that triggered the decision now. Was there information that was received from allies, a new analysis that was done, anything in particular that resulted in this happening now?
No, Kim, we don't comment on internal cybersecurity issues. This is clearly based on the Commission's assessment of the situation, and we will not go into further details on that. Yeah.
Julian Bloomberg, two questions on this. You guys say this is a suspension, in which case, what is needed from TikTok in order to lift the suspension? Is some kind of cybersecurity confirmations? I also was curious if you were in talks with other EU institutions about implementing similar suspensions.
Thanks. Sonia.
What I can tell on this point is that this is a temporary measure, or this is a measure under constant review and possible reassessments.
But, we're not going to say here what is necessary or not in order for the suspension to be lifted. Again, we are constantly monitoring situations when it comes to our IT applications one way or another, and therefore take measures based on the latest information or assessment that we have made. Other questions on this? Wait, sorry, you have a follow-up again? Oh, yeah, sorry. We will inform the other institutions of our decision, of course. Oui, dis-moi là.
Bonjour. Est-ce que vous pouvez nous dire si d'autres applications du même genre, donc réseaux sociaux, etc.,
similar social
sont
networking
interdites,
apps and
suspendues,
so on
retirées,
are banned, suspended, withdrawn, or whatever from corporate mobiles or private mobiles? Has this happened before, or is this the first time?
Du momentum et de la cause de la décision reste quand même ouverte.
And it's true that the cause remains an open question, but really, why now? Have you had some information to suggest that it's become particularly problematic now, more so than in the past? Nice try, Alain, but we won't be commenting any further on what's led to this decision being taken today. As we've said, we are constantly analysing the cybersecurity of the Commission's digital applications and installations and taking decisions. And we don't make public why these decisions have been taken for obvious reasons. I will give the floor to Sonia for your first question. Yes, the Commission regularly issues recommendations on the use of different applications by staff. So, for example, video conferencing applications like Skype for Business and WebEx,
les deux, Skype for Business and WebEx, sont
Skype for Business and WebEx are approved of by the Commission, by the Commission's Corporate Management Board.
Donc, pour bien préciser, parce qu'on se concentre là sur...
But I think we have to clarify things here, because we're looking here at an app. But what we have to look at are the Commission's IT tools, the IT tools which are used by the Commission, some of which are on the mobile digital devices which we use, but they might also be on computers and so on and so on. There are applications which have been analysed and which have been approved of by the Commission for its use. You know one of them very well. It's Interactio. We use it every day.
On ne se sert pas de Zoom pour faire ça. Ça ne veut pas dire que Zoom est interdit, mais ça veut dire que ce n'est pas une application qui a été homologuée par la Commission pour être utilisée par ces services.
An application which has got the go-ahead from the Commission for it to be used by its services.
D'autres outils informatiques
there are other applications and other IT tools on which recommendations have been issued. You might remember, for example, that we suggested to staff that they use Signal rather than WhatsApp.
C'est la première fois
and here, and I think it's the first time that this has been done, we're talking about a specific decision
qui entraîne la suppression d'une application,
leading to the removal of an application, in this case TikTok, from Commission devices, and asking staff who use their private devices in the professional sphere to delete it from their phones. A follow-up.
Est-ce que donc oui, qu'en est-il des applications type
What about applications
Instagram,
like Facebook, Instagram,
par exemple, Telegram?
Telegram,
est-ce que celles-ci sont autorisées ou ne le sont pas?
Are they authorized or not?
Et deuxièmement, est-ce que la Commission est équipée ou autorise
is the Commission equipped, or does the Commission
de téléphone de la marque Huawei? Merci.
The private or professional use of Huawei devices.
Exhaustive de l'ensemble des outils
well, I can't give you an exhaustive list of all of the IT tools which are authorized by the Commission. If you're really interested, I'm sure we could send it to you. We don't have it with us here.
Je n'ai absolument pas d'informations sur une quelconque décision.
I don't have any information at all on a decision of that nature
les appareils
regarding
privés, enfin les marques autorisées pour les appareils privés
the brands which are authorized for
je ne pense pas que nous ayons émis la moindre recommandation de décision sur ce sujet.
I don't think there's been any decision on that.
Que quand un outil, un téléphone portable par exemple,
is that when a tool, a private mobile phone, for example, is used in a work context, so you've installed our application on it to get Commission email, for example, then you have to sign a declaration which, as part of, which means that you're part of this program, corporate program. And as of that moment, you have to respect the Commission's instructions for the use of it, and I think that makes perfect sense. Yes, please.
Ronnie, Matthew Newman from MLEX. Just to ask about the enforcement of this, how does that work actually? Does, I suppose there's a list of corporate phones, a list of phones that you have. Is that everyone just kind of called into the IT office and said, you know, please delete it? Or do they just delete it on their own and the Commission trusts that they do it? Is there any kind of verification that they've deleted it? What if they reinstall it? It's just, as Eric just said, it's just one app. So, pretty easy to install and reinstall. Thanks.
On corporate devices, I don't know. Do you have the information, Sonia?
It's normally, well, this is something that is a security, internal security decision, so we are not communicating on the implementation and enforcement, how we are doing, because this touches upon the, let's say, security of our internal systems. So we are not able to provide any detail on this aspect.
Let me say one thing, though. I mean, it's clear that corporate devices like this one obviously are very well monitored by the Commission services. We are regularly asked to make updates. If you don't do the updates in time, then your phone stops working, at least certain apps start working, simply because the security protocols are no longer up to date, etc., etc. When it comes to a person who would have a private device, then clearly it is that person's responsibility to comply with the security instructions given by the Commission. It engages that person's responsibility. They have signed a declaration when they signed up to the Commission corporate device management program. Any other questions? Good Lord, what a level of interest.
Je comprends un peu que vous n'allez pas justifier chaque décision.
Obviously, I understand you're not going to justify every single individual decision. But generally speaking, what are the criteria that come into play? Is it just security, or are there other criteria, like price, etc.?
Le prix.
Price.
Non, il s'agit d'une décision.
We're talking here about a security decision.
Uniquement de sécurité, c'est pas du tout une
security.
On parle de deux choses différentes.
We're talking about two different things.
Quand tu parles de prix, évidemment, la Commission, quand elle utilise des outils informatiques
corporate IT tools, well, that's obviously part of public procurement. And you've got the applicable procedures. Now, here we're not talking about that. We're talking about a decision that is linked into cybersecurity issues, as Sonia said. So we're really in that category rather than in a commercial category.
Yeah, David.
Yeah, so if I understand this correctly, this is an internal decision or internal procedure concerning just Commission employees. But I was wondering, are there any implications for us, normal citizens, or for journalists? I mean, are you saying that it's okay to use TikTok, it's safe, or you're just not saying anything at all about it?
We're not saying anything at all about it. This is a specific Commission decision. For the rest, it's for the Member States. To issue any advice or recommendations or any other type of decisions that they might see fit. No, this is strictly Commission internal. Joe.
Thank you. I've not got TikTok or ever used it, but I've learned today reading about it, something called a TikTok hole. Is there any concern or is there any reasoning behind the ban that might be about raising productivity inside the Commission and stopping Commission officials losing hours of their workday by simply watching videos of dogs prancing around or whatever else you find on TikTok? Thank you.
Joe, I liked the very informative question that you asked. I think I've already replied to it previously by saying that it was strictly related to cybersecurity. But I appreciate your concern about Commission productivity and public services in general. I would say that in view of the time that we all spend on social media, including yourselves, by the way, because I'm an avid follower of all your extremely informative tweets, I'm sure that it's a question we all need to ask ourselves regularly, how best to use these social media tools. Right, I think that shows that the debate is now becoming slightly a fringe debate, but I still have lots of questions in the chat. Christian.
Oui, juste un détail. Je voulais savoir la recommandation entre en application quand j'ai vu que c'était le 15 mars. I read that it was the 15th of March. Aux fonctionnaires, aux employés de la Commission de désinstaller TikTok pour le 15 mars. You're asking Commission staff to disinstall it by the 15th of March, are you? And the next question, what will happen if they don't do it? Un fonctionnaire de la Commission
if a Commission official
sur son appareil privé
TikTok on their private device,
le réseau de mail et qu'il la désinstalle.
They use that for Commission email, for example, and they don't delete it. Will there be any penalties? What's going to happen?
Nous ne parlons pas de tic-tac.
Thank you,
Mais sur ta langue
Christian.
mais de TikTok.
Yes, just to specify, we're talking about TikTok, not Tic-Tac here. I'm sorry for being humorous.
Pour parler de ce sujet essentiel. La deuxième, c'est qu'effectivement, tu as lu correctement. La décision s'applique à partir du 15 mars.
The decision applies as of the 15th of March.
Jusqu'à cette date,
Commission staff have until that date to uninstall the application from their telephones.
Je n'ai pas d'informations particulières en ce qui
I don't have any particular information about what will happen if that's not done.
On peut imaginer que cela pourrait
But we
remettre en
might
cause la
well
participation
imagine
du
that this might
de cet
lead
appareil numérique au
to questions about whether that digital
de la Commission.
device
Je ne suis pas en mesure ici de te donner les modalités
continue
précises.
to participate in the corporate program, for example. I don't know. I can't give you specifics.
I was just wondering, TikTok has already responded and said the decision was misguided and based on fundamental misconceptions. I was wondering how you have engaged with TikTok in the making of this decision and if you have contacted them regarding the decision and your comments more generally about their response.
We're not going to comment on this. Again, it's an internal Commission assessment related to its internal cybersecurity. Finbar.
Thank you, Eric. Sorry if I missed this earlier, but is this the only application that has ever been banned from Commission devices? I was going to ask specifically whether there's been anything about WeChat, which is obviously another very popular Chinese app that there are many security concerns about as well. Has that ever been considered being banned by the Commission? Thank you.
Thank you. We already answered that question. As far as I know, it is the first decision related to an app, and we have not mentioned WeChat in any context. Where you are?
Hi. Yeah, I just want to know how much of this decision is under U.S. pressure or influence. So we all know that it's public that when EU made a decision regarding Huawei 5G, and it's under a lot of U.S. pressure, Mike Pence, Mike Pompeo, everyone came to Europe 2 years ago, and actually the UK independent assessment shows there was really no security threat compared to similar company from Europe or South Korea or others. So how much is actually a coordination or pressure from the U.S.?
Yeah, none is the answer. And I hope I see that on your Twitter account after the midday, since you asked a question related to a similar issue recently and commented on that on your Twitter account. So let's hope that you will post this answer as well. Any other question for us on this issue today? No? So let us move on. Oh, sorry. Excuse-moi, je t'avais pas vu. Emmanuel.
Oui, juste
Sorry, I hadn't seen you. Yes, just a quick question. Can you tell me how many attempted cyber attacks take place against the Commission each year?
Je n'ai pas les statistiques
each
ici,
day, more like. I don't have the figures here.
Le porte-parole spécialisé sur ces questions
and the specialized spokesperson on that isn't here. We can have a look.
La Commission, comme je crois.
But the Commission, like many public institutions, I believe, is the subject of attempted attacks on a regular and repeated basis. And that's why we take very seriously all issues linked to the security of our IT systems, including mobile devices, which we make use of during the course of our work. Right. I don't see any other questions on this particular subject. Thank you very much. So let's move on to other subjects. David.
This question for Tim. It's on the zero rating of biomass under the ETS, that it doesn't have to buy allowances for the emissions emitted by burning biomass. As I understand that this, if you could explain the situation as it is today without looking at what might come in terms of, the RED 3 legislation, so we're talking about RED 2, is that, for the Commission, does that constitute support, financial support, the fact that biomass burning, the companies don't have to buy the ETS allowances as of today? Thanks.
So Tim is taking a couple of days off. Adalbert is trying to replace him, but I have to say that's a quite specific question. Let's see if he can answer. If not, we'll come back to you bilaterally.
Hi, thanks a lot. So first of all, let me try to maybe understand your question properly. And first of all, let me try to see where exactly you are in the press room. Thanks, sorry. So if I understand correctly, you're basically asking whether the fact that renewable energy is rated as, that biomass is rated as renewable energy under the Renewable Energy Directive, and that therefore using it doesn't require companies necessarily to surrender ETS allowances, whether this constitutes a type of state aid. Is that your question? Or?
I can put it in writing later, but it's non-sustainable biomass. What would be termed non-sustainable biomass burnt in an installation in the EU? Does that constitute support the fact that it doesn't have to buy ETS certificates for the emissions?
Okay, David, I think we'll come back to you on that, because I think you'll agree that is a very, very specific question on the functioning of ETS. Very legitimate question, obviously, but I'll give Adalbert a pass here on the podium and ask him to consult before he comes back to you on that. Okay? Right. Alain.
J'ai une question pour Nabila.
A question for Nabila, if you don't mind.
C'est à propos de la visite de
This
l'ambassadrice
is the visit of the Swiss ambassador
dans une mosquée à Com, la ville sainte de Com, une visite qu'elle a effectuée dans un chador
done
noir
in a black chador, fairly
un vrai chador,
a real chador,
ce qui a soulevé beaucoup d'indignation
and this gave rise to a lot of indignation.
Bien entendu de l'opposition iranienne qui se déclare indignée par tous les canaux possibles et imaginables. Mais aussi j'entends des voix du Parlement européen qui trouvent ça absolument révoltant. Je voudrais savoir ce que la Commission en pense. Est-ce que c'est acceptable compte tenu que voilà, on sait la situation des femmes en ce moment.
Given the situation of women who are fighting against the obligation to wear the chador. So Nabila.
Bonjour Alain et merci pour ta
question.
So
Alain, thank you for your question.
Comme tu le sais, j'ai pas vraiment
As you know, I haven't followed the subject, given that
tout ce que fait l'ambassadrice, tous les déplacements de
all of the Swiss ambassadors' engagements, I really are not following those. So it's not really my place to comment on this engagement. Nor should I comment on how she chose to dress. So that's all I can say. We're not going to get into that. First of all, we don't know. Secondly, it's a very specific visit, so no comments.
Voilà, merci. On peut généraliser la question.
So you can generalize things. Is it acceptable? Is it acceptable that an ambassador in Iran from a European country ostensibly wears the chador, especially given the repression, the bloody repression? We all know what's happening to women who are protesting against this regime. Alain, I understand your interest in the issue, but first of all, it's an issue that has a lot of dimensions. There's a dimension you're talking about here.
tout à fait d'actualité sur
which
laquelle
is
la Commission,
obviously something that's on the front pages, yes, and the EU generally, and the Commission specifically,
les droits des femmes
feels that the right of women in Iran is very important. We don't need to repeat here all of the declarations that were made by the High Representative and by his spokespeople and EU personalities as to the protection and expansion of women's rights in Iran. The Commission has been very clear on that. Now, another issue is a visit to religious sites.
La même chose.
It's not the same thing.
On ne va pas rentrer
We are not going to get into a debate here as to what is acceptable in terms of attire to go into a religious site.
Voilà. Mais que les choses soient claires.
But things need to be
Nous
clear.
avons une position qui est bien connue
Our position is well known
les droits
when
des
it
femmes
comes to the rights of women,
iraniennes,
rights of Iranian women in Iran. Our position is clear on
et
that.
cette position, il me semble, enfin Nabila peut certainement
And I think Nabila, I'm sure, can
est différente
delve into that with you if you so desire, but that's different, a different issue to attire that one would wear when entering a religious site.
De culte, que ce soit
in a place of worship, whether it be in Europe
dans un État tiers.
Or in a third country.
Voilà. Rien à rajouter.
Nothing to add from Nabila, who specializes in these issues.
Y a-t-il d'autres questions affaires étrangères?
Any other questions on foreign affairs for Nabila?
Affaires étrangères?
Foreign affairs.
Oui, vous me direz si c'est pas ça. Jacques Grandin de l'Opinion. C'est une question sur les sanctions contre la Russie. Est-ce que vous pouvez préciser celles qui sont les plus difficiles à mettre en œuvre et à contrôler que c'est bien réalisé? Pourquoi, dans ces cas-là, c'est difficile de les mettre en œuvre? Et qu'est-ce qu'on peut imaginer pour s'assurer que ça soit mis en œuvre?
And what could we imagine might be done to help? Well, this isn't a question for Nabila. This would be a question for Dan, really.
Mais on ne va pas faire ici une typologie
But we're not going to go into the specific typology of the difficulties in implementing the sanctions. What's clear is that this is an important subject.
Pour cela, notamment, que nous avons nommé
and that's why we appointed a representative to be responsible for dealing with the implementation of the sanctions so as to avoid them being got around.
Efficaces à partir du moment où elles sont appliquées, elles sont mises en œuvre avec nos partenaires internationaux. Et c'est pour cela que vous savez que nous nous coordonnons de manière étroite avec notamment nos partenaires du G7.
With our G7 partners
la mise en œuvre des sanctions, parce que
for the implementation of sanctions, because the more coherence there is between the sanctions taken by the various different players, the US, the UK, the EU, Canada, Japan, and so on, the more of an impact they'll have.
Ensuite, il y a bien entendu des mesures qui sont d'application directe à partir du moment où nous décidons de ne plus importer de biens
once a decision has been taken to stop importing goods coming from Russia,
sur le territoire de l'Union européenne, et c'est donc quelque chose qu'il nous est plus facile de gérer.
Bien entendu, la question clé it might be possible to evade the sanctions. And it's there that we're focusing our efforts, not just ours. The same goes for the partners that we work with. I hope that answers your question.
Oui, juste une précision. Est-ce qu'on peut dire aujourd'hui que c'est plus compliqué et important de regarder ce contournement des sanctions et cette mise en œuvre que de décider les sanctions elles-mêmes? Ou est-ce que c'est exagéré de dire ça?
Rather than deciding on the sanctions themselves, or is that a bit over the top?
Je ne pense pas être en mesure de répondre à cette question.
Frankly, I don't think I can answer that question.
Nous avons déjà réussi à approuver
What's clear is that we have already
de
managed
sanctions.
to agree on 9
Les discussions
packages
sont en
of
cours
sanctions.
sur le
Discussions
10e.
are underway on the 10th.
C'est une situation qui évolue constamment.
The situation is evolving constantly. The more sanctions there are, then the more we have to focus on their correct implementation, of course.
Other questions on foreign affairs for us today? Affaires étrangères? Oui, Odile.
Oui, bonjour. Concernant la future conférence des donateurs du 16 mars,
future donors conference on the 16th of March. Is it true or is it fake news that funds for Syria will be exclusively reserved to the rebel areas rather than the areas controlled by the regime? That's not really a question for Nabila. I think Balash or Anna would. Anna, maybe?
Merci beaucoup pour la question, Odile.
Thank you very much for that question, Odile.
Je pense que c'est vraiment très tôt. Les préparations vont commencer maintenant.
We need to prepare the conference first. As the Commissioner said, the Commissioner was in Turkey to begin preparations for this very important conference. As you'll be aware, it will be organized in coordination with the Swedish presidency of the Council and in close coordination with the Turkish authorities. The principle is very simple. It's up to each donor to decide how they're going to supply aid. But what is very clear, and this is our objective, we want to mobilize assistance for people, the Syrian people, and obviously for the Turkish population as well, those who are very much affected by the earthquake.
Odile, on va pas commenter plus.
We're not going to comment more on this. We're not going to comment on a conference that is currently being organized. I don't know where you read that. So I'm just saying that to you because I do have contacts. I have contacts in Aleppo, and they are propagating this kind of information.
Nous te remercions de nous fournir cette information. Et encore une fois, la conférence est en train d'être organisée.
Just to say that the conference is currently being organized. We're not going to make any comments on what everybody around the world can say about a conference that hasn't yet been taken, where the decisions haven't yet been made. I think the principles that Anna set out are vital from that point of view.
D'autres questions sur
Any other questions on EU aid to Turkey and Syria after the earthquake?
Je n'en vois pas.
I don't see any.
D'autres questions affaires étrangères?
Any questions under foreign affairs, seeing as we're on the subject?
You have another question.
Eric, I think I missed a few words when you said at the beginning, citing a survey that shows EU's overwhelming support for Ukraine. But I want actually you to comment on actually the survey released yesterday by the European Council on Foreign Relations, which shows EU and the US and the rest of the world had totally different approach to the crisis. EU, US want support Ukraine to win, while the rest of the world want, basically citing China, India, Turkey want a quicker solution. And also shows that, actually 80% of India regard Russia as ally partner, 79 in China, 69 in Turkey. So while EU and the US regard Russia mostly as adversary. So what, is EU reflecting on this huge divide between nations? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Well, the first thing is, we're not going to spend our time commenting surveys or opinion polls which are published by other institutions. For us, what is fundamental? It is that you have a sovereign country, Ukraine, with internationally recognized borders, which has been invaded by a foreign country. And this foreign country is even annexing part of its territory. So what we say, and what I believe European public opinion and this survey supports this, what we are saying is that Ukraine, A, has a right to defend itself, B, should be in a position to have its sovereignty and its territorial integrity respected. And let me remind you, you speak of a very large divide, but there have been UN resolutions voted on this at the General Assembly. And the number of countries who have both condemned Russia and supported Ukraine in this country is overwhelming. Now, whether people's individual attitudes when it comes to what is the best result for them in terms of the conflict may vary from one region of the world to another. It may perfectly be the case. Of course, your worries are different if you are living far away from the zone and if you are living very close to it. But for us, it is absolutely obvious that this conflict has put in question the territorial integrity and the sovereignty of a country which we recognize, which is a partner of the European Union, and that this has, of course, severe security implications for Europe. And therefore, it is no surprise that our attitude vis-à-vis this conflict is what it is. That's what I can say on this. Any other questions on Ukraine, since we have now broached the subject? Emmanuel.
Oui, Emmanuel Beretta, Le Point. La Chine se targue d'un plan de paix pour l'Ukraine.
China says it has a peace plan for Ukraine. Have they been in touch with you to check parts of it out?
Voilà, pour essayer de voir s'il y a quelque chose à tirer de ça.
Trying to see if there's anything in that.
Nabila.
Thank you. Nabila.
Merci Emmanuel.
Thank you, Emmanuel.
Ce que je peux dire sur le sujet, c'est que le
What I can say on this is that the High Representative,
il a parlé avec son
as he said,
chinois,
spoke to his Chinese counterpart,
également de la situation en Ukraine,
amongst other things about the situation in Ukraine,
de la Chine de jouer un rôle
and how important it was that China play a positive role in Ukraine.
Sur le plan de paix, je t'invite à regarder la
As far as the peace plan goes, I suggest you look at the press conference that took place yesterday with Mr. Kuleba and the High Representative, where Mr. Kuleba evoked the peace plan and said that there were some elements, but so far we don't have all the elements we would need to be able to properly evaluate the peace plan.
Tommaso, you have a question on this, on foreign affairs issue.
Yes, good afternoon. Many thanks for the floor. It's related to Ukraine, not exactly on Ukraine, but I wonder if you I apologize if this question has already been asked. I don't know if it has already been asked, but I wonder if you have any comment about the report made by Seymour Hersh, a Pulitzer Prize journalist, who wrote a very informed article about what happened. What might have happened in to the Nord Stream. It's based on anonymous sources. They basically claim that it's been U.S. forces along with Norway military forces to place the bombs which detonated the Nord Stream. I just wonder if you have a comment, because I know it's based on anonymous sources, but it's it's very detailed, and the problem is that it appears to be the most credible explanation to what happened to the Nord Stream. You got any comment? Thank you.
Nabila.
C'est pour Anita, je pense.
Anita.
Thank you, Tommaso. Well, on the investigations on the Nord Stream sabotage, you know already our position quite clear. The investigation on the exact circumstances are ongoing in several countries, and this is also under the responsibility of the member states.
I mean, basically, Tommaso, we are not privy to the details of the national investigations that are ongoing, and obviously, therefore, refrain from commenting on any issue related to these investigations. And that will remain our line. Okay, any other questions for us today? David.
Thank you, Eric. David Price, Your Democracy. Half of the, or 49% of the Nord Stream company was European, German, Dutch, and French, I believe. Has any investigation and compensation for this act of sabotage been launched in terms of the European institutions and the companies concerned?
Sorry, you're asking whether the shareholders, the European shareholders of Nord Stream 2, have asked the Commission for compensation because of the act of sabotage. I don't understand your question, David. I'm sorry.
No, it's a security problem for companies. It's a structural and security problem for the most vital infrastructure. So I'm wondering whether what considerations are investigations are being done in terms of the European aspects of it, because actually sabotaging European infrastructure is considered by some to be an act of war. So it's we're talking about the most serious aspects of international relations.
So if I understand well, your question is what we're doing about the security of critical infrastructure, to summarize it. Yeah? Okay, this is a question we've had the opportunity to discuss here in the press room many times, and then Anita is the right person to give you the answer. So.
Indeed, I'll be very happy to reiterate, because as said before, the sabotage of the Nord Stream gas pipeline made it clear that the resilience of the EU's critical infrastructure is under threat. We have presented by the President a 5-point plan last year on the 5th of October to address these issues. We have also proposed recommendations to accelerate the work on 3 priorities areas, such as preparedness, response, and international cooperation. And of course, we have already anticipated the need to strengthen our critical infrastructure. Already in 2020, we have proposed a significant upgrade of the EU rules on the resilience of critical entities. We have 2 legislation proposals that have been now already adopted, and we have also foreseen a EU-NATO task force on resilient critical infrastructure for a closer EU-NATO cooperation, which will share best practices, develop key principles to improve the resilience, and coordinate mitigating actions.
Thank you. Follow-up, David?
It's a slightly different question. President Trump said 2 days ago, former President Trump, that he denounced the warmongers in the State Department and the Defense Department in America, and mentioned specifically Victoria Nuland, who was pushing Ukraine into NATO. So this is dating back quite a bit of time. So I'm wondering what contacts you've had with American officials about the origin of this particular thing, which you have a one-sided, very repetitive view of. It's obviously a fairly complicated situation. And so I'd like to ask what contacts you've had with the Americans.
David, let's be clear. We have a way of working here, which is we have a subject, okay? We were discussing security of critical infrastructure. If I give you the floor, it's for a follow-up on that issue first, right? Because there are lots of people who raise their hand. That's the first thing. So I'm parking your question for the moment to see if there are if there are other issues related to the security of critical infrastructure and what the EU is doing. That is not the case. Then I would ask whether there are other questions on home affairs for Anita, since she is here on the podium. All right. No, that is not the case. Then I give the floor to the gentleman behind you. Sorry. Yeah.
Todd Buell from Law 360 Tax Authority. It would be for Dan. I asked in the earlier press conference with Commissioner Breton about whether the fair contribution was a digital tax, and in summary he said no. But I was wondering if you could give us an update about where the EU stands on the implementation of Pillar 1 of the OECD tax project. Thank you.
Okay. Dan, do we have an update? I think the answer is not really.
Todd, I was very quickly consulting there to see whether we had any update, and the answer is no. So I have no update for you. Our position remains exactly the same.
Any other question for Dan on tax-related issues? No, that is not the case. Thank you very much. So now we come back to your question, David, which I have to say I had a bit of a hard time understanding, but fundamentally you say we have a one-sided view of the conflict. If I understood you correctly, we don't have a one-sided view of the conflict. You may think we have a one-sided view of the conflict, and that's your right. We have a view of the conflict which is based on something which is slightly critical, which is international law. And international law foresees, as I said in my previous answer, that a country, a sovereign country, which has internationally recognized borders, should not be invaded by another country. I really don't understand why taking this view would be seen as warmongering. Let me remind you, it's not Ukraine that invaded Russia. It's Russia that invaded Ukraine. And comments by US politicians on members of the administration are definitely not for this press room to comment on. So we will not make any comment on this. But let's be clear. We stand by Ukraine. We believe that Ukraine is a victim of an abominable aggression, and that this country merits the full support of the international community. And we will continue to stand by Ukraine until the end of this conflict, and then to the conflict, which will be done, as we have always said, respecting Ukraine's decisions. And that is something which will not vary, whatever US politicians may say. Okay. I see. Yeah, David, follow up, but it's the last one.
Sorry, you seem to make a jump, which I wasn't. I was following up from the question about the Seymour Hersh articles, which are implicating America in the sabotage of the Nord Stream. My question was purely on that. You have, in February of last year, President Biden was talking about stopping Nord Stream, and so was Victoria Nuland. So that's my question, whether that indications and those public statements have been followed through by the Commission to understand what's been going on.
Again, David, there are national investigations into the incident, the sabotage, or the explosions that took place around this. The Commission is not in the business of conducting or commenting on these investigations, so we will not comment on this here in the press room. Okay, thank you very much. This brings us to the end of today's midday briefing. See you tomorrow.
没看过这样的莎莎，原来运动帽戴起来可以那么性感。一顶运动帽，看见中天小清新加于另一种风情。粉红色特别适合沉浸在幸福里的请教官。小豪主播安静下来，把 C 位让给运动帽。中天文创品牌 Keep Going 系列运动休闲帽，个性黑、樱花粉、 奶茶色3款配色即可入手，请上快点购。有您的支持，中天 Keep Going。